What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Devote 101. I am Nelson and Thomas, and if you notice, I'm sitting outside, which is a different thing for this podcast, and I'm very excited for this one. First of all, before we actually get started, I will say the guy that is with me on the podcast is my brother-in-law, Chapman Nelson. He came to me with this idea about a month ago or something like that, and also we have in the background doing all the production stuff is you can say my brother-in-law as well, Chapman Nelson. He was on a podcast a few episodes ago, and he's running all the cameras and everything. And I just want to say thank you to both of y'all, for Chapman for helping and Justin for inviting me over here and coming up with this whole nice setup. It's just everything just looks amazing. So.
Oh, you gotta thank Mikey for the fire. Mikey
Yes,
did the fire.
Mikey did put the fire together. He put it together and he took off. I don't know where he went, but
There, no telling.
So, as this is the second part talking about priorities, and you came to me with this devotion about a month ago. You kind of briefly mentioned to me, I want to talk about something about priorities. I want to make a podcast about it and stuff like that. And I was like, okay. You didn't give me a full rundown of it yet, but
Yeah, because at the time I didn't even have a full rundown. That was just something I felt on my spirit.
yeah. And then you sent me the full, I guess, rough draft.
Yeah.
And that's when I started thinking, okay, this dude's legit about this. You thought it all the way through, and then we worked on putting the video together, and you wanted me to narrate it and all that kind of stuff, and so Justin came up with that whole devotion. Like I said, it was by Justin Nelson. He came up with it. I just narrated it and put the video together. But Justin came up with all the meat in this devotion sandwich. I don't know. That was a weird way of describing that. But anyway, so let's get into this. So first of all, I will say about the priority thing. While I was making the video, I will say, it changed my perspective on things. If you think about it, it should be a simple concept, of what should be prioritized.
Right.
More importantly, I guess. And it's very easy to lose the idea of what's more important in life. And that it touched me. I know at the very beginning you were saying, I don't know if this, I hope this touches people. I mean, it touched me, and I was the one making it. And
Man, you did an awesome job. I mean, I was telling Diana about it. I was like, it's just, there's no way that I can describe that everything I had in my head, you literally done without even me being around. It's just, I gave you a note. Literally, I sent you notes, and you changed it. And it even made me really think about the words God was speaking to me. It's just crazy.
Well, man, that came from God, and you utilized it. So, I mean, man, it was a good touch. Like I said, it's very easy to forget about how important God needs to be in our lives.
Right.
See, I will say this, and by the way, we will have another guest on in a few minutes, Brother Thomas Ussery. So, and we're pretty excited about this.
I'm really excited about it.
I know you and Brother Thomas talked about it as well.
Yes, and we'll get into that too whenever we get on the phone, but me and Brother Thomas talked about it. He even opened my eyes even more to what I was really trying to figure out in my life, what priorities really stood for. Because, me and you talked about whenever I made the what's it called? The quote, you could say, I said priorities in little p and priorities in big P. It's the same as little spirit and big spirit. It's literally that different when you really start thinking about it,
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about this. This is something that God has worked on me for over 6 months. I said 6 months in my post because that's when I've really started narrowing it down to the things about my priorities. And it really opens your eyes whenever you take the time to really observe your life and pick through priorities.
That's awesome. Tell you what, before we get too deep into this, I want to get Brother Ussery in this because I feel like we're leaving him out. So now we're gonna step in and get him on the call real quick. All right, Brother Thomas, we're gonna go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast. Just thank you
That'll
so
work.
much.
I appreciate you guys inviting me.
All right, but before we get started on the topic, if you could just tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Yep, I'm a father to three kids, and I've been pastoring for about a year now at Life Point Pentecostal Church there in Ruston, Louisiana. And I've also been a engineer working for a consulting firm for about 15 years.
So this guy's a smart guy.
Yeah.
So
Way too smart to be talking to me, that's for sure.
all
I
right,
definitely don't get to hunt and fish as much as you guys, that's for sure.
all right. So basically the topic we're talking about tonight is priorities, and me and Justin have just briefly talked about it. It's very easy to lose what is basically the way Justin said it was like little p priorities and big P priorities, like what's more important. It's very easy to forget about what's the important priorities in life.
No, I mean, I agree with that. And sometimes I think we tend to look at and think this is an age thing, but I can tell you that priorities is something that whether you're a teenager, even a younger child, preteen, all the way up to someone that is retired and in their twilight years, you're constantly reassessing this part of your life. And so it's important that you're open about it, you talk about it, you involve others in it, because it's something that's easy for you to fall into a blind spot if you're not being open with other people and you don't have people around you that you trust that can speak to you. Then it's easy for this part of your life priorities to be a blind spot where you don't even know that you've lost focus on what's important.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have somebody hold you accountable.
Yeah, exactly. And I really feel like, I told you before that, me and Brother Thomas, we had talked about it. And I feel like now I have an accountability because he knows what I was going through, why I did this, why I felt this. And that, yeah, accountability is a good word for this because it's crazy to think about.
And when that person's no longer a parent, and and you really figure out who you trust in life when you start setting up these accountabilities in your life, and it's not your parents, and then it's your spouse. I can tell you, the first time that you and your spouse, that person tries to create a partnership and accountability, that can be a stressful time. Through most of your life, you're used to having a parent over your shoulder, and you're just kind of taught from birth that, hey, these people correct you when you lose focus on what's the main thing in life. And when that person is no longer a parent and now it's a spouse, it's an adjustment period, and it puts a lot of stress on people. So, your relationships with your friends and your spouse, and hopefully your spouse is also your friend, it's real important, because you're going to have these times. And I promise you, yeah, it happens right after you have kids. And then it happens again. I've talked to people whose kids go off to college and they become empty nesters. And then it happens again. And having someone close to you that doesn't immediately put you on the defensive, but you know that they really love you when they're giving you feedback, that's really important. I know it is to me, and I'm sure it is to a lot of other people.
Yeah, that's pretty good advice for me because Brother Thomas, actually, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm engaged, um, and that's pretty good advice to take. Trying to me and my fiance, we're trying to hold each other accountable with everything, but also trying not to make it feel like we're, what do you call it, like overstepping. When we're checking each other, trying to make it like we're not trying to offend the other person or judge the other person. It's always we're trying to figure that out, which is we find it very difficult, but we're learning through it.
Yeah, because a lot of times the immediate reaction of most people when someone's trying to tell you, whether they're doing it tactfully or not tactfully, they're trying to tell you that there's an imbalance in your relationship in your life, and they're trying to communicate that to you. And immediately, you know, us guys, we're a pretty simple bunch, but I've seen the trigger over and over again. Someone tries to say, "Hey, this isn't going as well. Maybe you think it's going well, and they try to express feelings in response to their feelings, that things aren't going well. We're like, well, I'm doing the best I can, or you just want to change me, and and it's that lack of introspection where we're looking at ourselves, going, you know what, this person really does care about me. They really do love me. What are they trying to tell me? uh, and that's where the trust comes in, and it's an area you have to explore, and more than one time you're going to mess up, and you're going to respond and lash out, maybe in anger. uh, but hopefully not. Hopefully you have that, I guess, contract with that person in your life to be able to say, hey, I want you to speak truth to me, and understand that if I don't react well, that I'll calm down, I'll settle myself, and I'll come back into the conversation and be able to say, you know what, thank you for giving me that honest feedback, because I need to know that something in my life has become.
That's good. That's exactly it. It's just you got to have somebody that, like you said, when it comes to you, you got to have that respect and knowing you're doing it out of love and you're doing it to help. I can come to Nate and be like, look, man, this, and this, I really feel like, I think that you could do better. And I'm doing it out of love, not saying you're doing wrong. Look, and I'll help you. I'll be there for you. That's just the way you got to look at it. It's not somebody beating you over the head being like, oh, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. That ain't how it works. It can't be like that.
That actually brought up a question uh, that I could ask for either one of you guys. If like we're talking about finding the people that find the right people to hold us accountable uh, on our priorities and stuff. But my question would be, like, for the other side, if you're the person holding someone else accountable, how would you go about that? You briefly just mentioned something about it, Justin, but like primarily, I guess my question is, what is the best approach?
Well, if let me gauge this here. So tonight, between the four of us, I think we have someone at at most of the stages of life up to middle age here. So Chapman's single. uh, Nate, you're engaged, about to be married with no kids, and then Justin, of course, you're married with young children, very young children, toddlers, and then I'm I'm pushing the 40ish, with teenagers now. So am I right? We all have that different level of
Right.
relationship. Okay, so think about it like this. So the difference between us four holding each other accountable, and the accountability you get at these different stages in life, makes a big difference. If someone comes to Chapman, and especially, let's say it's a young lady comes to Chapman and wants to hold him accountable on his priorities because of how much time he's spending with her. Now that may not come across very well. We're not married, uh, because in all reality, that what they may find out is that young lady is not a priority in his life as far as a relationship yet. He has school, he has work, he has these other things, his music, and so it may not come across well. uh, Nate, even at the engagement stage and early marriage stage, it may be a little bit of me versus you. By the time you work into the stage, uh, Nate, for you, it's going to be your future spouse without kids. By the time you start to work into Justin stage, that feedback, we're talking about spouses and things like that. That feedback may start coming from his children. uh, and then when you get to my level of life, then it even compounds. It may be your spouse, it may be your children. Where I'm at right now, it may be a corporation, and it could also be my church. Imagine a church coming to a pastor and saying, hey, I think your priorities are not balanced right now. And so I think the thing to do is to make sure that if you need to give that feedback, the first thing to do is to understand the nature of the relationship that you and that other person have. Uh, a spouse is a great one to give feedback, because guess what? If we're treating this biblically, fellas, you and your spouse are one. So it'd be like your right hand not recognizing the priorities that your left hand. You and your spouse are supposed to be one, and so you should be very open to that, and you can address it from that standpoint. Hey, I want to talk to you about our life, because obviously every action each one of us makes affects the other. But as that grows distance, for someone, in Chapman's situation, honestly, it could still be a parent, and I think a parent has more leeway to be a little gruff with it, and the young person knows that they mean well. Uh, but it gets more delicate, especially when it's your children. What do you do? I'm curious, Justin. Have you considered that? What happens, or maybe it's already started to happen when your daughter says, what's one of the cues that something's out of balance? Like, how would you know if if she was trying to communicate that to you as a very young a child?
Well, I'm gonna be completely honest. There's been times where like I've been about to go somewhere, about to go do something, and Bendy would look at. She's like, "Daddy, where are you going?" And I'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that." And she's like, "Oh, well, are you gonna come back and play with me? Are you gonna come back and be with me?" It would make you check and be like, "Oh man, am I spending enough time with my family, or I'm putting other things in front of it?" And that's happened multiple times, and then like I overlooked it being young and being ignorant, being straight up. I overlooked my priorities. That's why this is so personal to me, because it was a family matter too, because I was letting things become more important than what it should have been. So kids, yes, kids is a huge thing that will make you check yourself.
But think about that simplicity. I agree with you, and that's something my kids would do to me as well. But think of that simplistic approach, Nate. A child simply says, "I missed you." A child simply says, "When are you going to do something with me?" And you say, "Well, that's because they're a child." But if kind of get biblical with you, sometimes we overcomplicate the process, and the Bible says, "Hey, if you'll approach more things like a child does in a child's innocence," and being able to come to, even if you don't have kids and you're just dating, or you're engaged, or you're just married, to be able to walk up to the other person, how do you approach it when the priorities are not balanced? Sometimes simply coming up to them and genuinely saying, "You know what, I really missed you lately, and I know that we end up at the same house together. I know that we're at the same places together, but I missed you. I don't feel like we are connecting." And that honesty right there is an open door to talk about priorities.
That's good, man. That's good. I just got filled with so much information right there. I think I'm it like from earlier, before you got on, Brother Thomas. When Justin came to me with this uh, devotion, it really checked me and made me think about. I had to take a step back on what my priorities are. Um, so this question also popped up. Uh, you might have already answered it, but I'll go ahead and ask it just in case we haven't. Um, this can be for either one of you. Uh, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, you know, I just asked about being the person to hold someone accountable and finding someone to hold you accountable. Uh, you know, that's good and that's great, but it's also about you also have to make the effort yourself to change those priorities. Um, what are some? I don't know. I guess the best way to ask this, like, what is some like things that you guys have learned on how to keep yourself accountable yourself? Because like I said, you got people that hold you accountable, but you also have to make the effort yourself uh, to make those changes. So, do y'all have any like, I guess, recommendations on things y'all have found out that is very effective on holding yourself accountable?
Yeah, Justin, I'm gonna sling it to you first, man, because you just came through this even in your personal life, and so I'm curious to from your perspective, and then I'll throw in a little biblical twist on it here too.
Well, my personal check, Nate, would be okay. Like my priorities was, when I say this, I mean it. legit out of line. And when I was running from my priorities, I was running from my responsibilities too. Priorities and responsibilities go hand in hand. And the way I check myself now is like when I get that feeling of uneasy, you know what I mean? Like instead of running from it, I face it head on and I face it with prayer and fasting. And the way I do that is time in the morning, and that's something as crazy as it sounds, routine. You know, we all three get up really early,
Hmm.
and I was the guy, and I still do sometimes. I push the snooze and sleep that extra 10 minutes, but instead of doing that, if you will discipline yourself to be like, okay, I've got 10 minutes extra time in this morning before I have to get up and do all this other stuff. Let me get my prayer life, my responsibilities, my priorities, my relationship with God in check first, right off the bat. And you know, I took it as if I get the so called hard thing done first, because we all can say we don't have time. We have time. It's just prioritizing your time, and that's the way to check. That's the way I check myself. Is like when I get that feeling, or I make it a habit, like every morning or every night. You got to make it a habit. You got to make this a lifestyle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, the scripture when we were talking about having this podcast and this roundtable, the scripture that came to mind for me is, when I was a child, I thought like a child, I acted like a child, but when I became an adult, I put away childish things. And that doesn't mean you eliminate all fun from your life. I love to hunt and I love to fish. I love to take the boat out, but how and when and where it's appropriate to do those things can very much change in your life. And so for me, it's been about taking time to assess where my life is right now. And I've done that periodically. And honestly, and people are going to think that this is something scripted. People don't really do this, but throughout the course of my life, my wife and I have sat down and we have created a plan. We've created a discipline structure. Here's what we're going to do the next 5 years. Here's what we're going to do the next 3 months. Here's what we're going to do. And by doing that, it helps set priorities. I mean, take something simple from a health perspective. So, on the priority side, simply sitting down and your spouse and I, for me, and it would be Heather and I, your spouses, sitting down and meal planning for 2 weeks is a great way to prioritize health because you're not eating at the last minute. You're not picking up whatever's handy, whatever can be cooked just the quickest. Uh, so it's a very simple example, but if you're willing to sit down and take a stock of where your life is and then plan for how to change, that's where it comes from. And that can be from meal planning to prioritize your health. Justin and I were talking about one and that I was very guilty of. I got down and repented after he and I first started talking about this. I was one that, it was nothing for me to show up to work 45 minutes, an hour early. Work started at a certain time, but I would come in an hour early and start work. And you say, well, you're a salaried employee. It's obviously not for the money. I have a very strong work ethic. I like my job. I take it very seriously. But what I didn't realize I was doing was some of that time I could actually see my kids when they got up in the morning before they went to school. If they were having a bad day from the very start of the day, I could have prioritized helping get them ready to get, even if I couldn't take them to school, I could help get them ready so that that didn't all fall on my spouse. But I was so prioritizing providing for my family when that extra hour wasn't providing for my family. Maybe it was making me feel better, but I had to say, God, am I really running from my family in the mornings because it's so stressful and leaving that for someone else to do? So part of prioritizing is really taking stock of your life. And Justin said it, you guys did a video on it. Where's your time going? And when you realize you're putting an extra hour to something that you didn't have to do, then ask yourself, I did that because why? What am I trying to get away from? And then your priorities, then those red flags start going off and says, hey, I've got to do something different with my life.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, I mean, him had talked about it. Like, as crazy as it is, fishing was mine. He talked about work. fishing was mine. Everybody knows me. Everybody knows I am a fisherman.
Fish
That
a
is
lot,
my
man.
life. I love to fish. But when all this started coming down to me, and God really started pressing on my spirit, like, get your priorities right. And I started thinking about, okay, well, I'm spending, man, I was spending 2.5, 3 hours sometime in the evening when I could have been home with my kids or doing something else, fishing, because I was running away from my responsibilities and my real priorities, because that was my getaway. That's something I've always told Diana whenever we was dating. I was like, fishing's my getaway. That is what I did. That was my getaway. But it wasn't a getaway. It was running away. And I in the last, I don't know. I keep looking at Chapman because he knows that for the last 4 or 5 months, I haven't fished at all. I went last weekend because me and Papa went, but not like I did. I would go after work. I would either have the boat hooked up or I was running home, grabbing my stuff, and leaving. When my kids would be home, most of the time when I get off work, my kids would be home. I don't know, 40 minutes. Then they would be home, and I really feel like I've missed so much of my kids growing up because of my little priorities. I thought I needed, like, I want to be the best there is at this. I want to be able to, when people, look at me, they know I can go catch a fish. Because I thought that was what I did. But it don't matter. None of that matters. Like, you can have hobbies, you can do all that. Don't get me wrong, I love fishing. I will go right now if we need to. But you got to understand that hobbies is one thing, making it a priority, and you can even say making it a god. You could
Yeah.
even go into that
Right.
because the Bible says, "Have no other gods before me," and a lot of people are like, "Oh, they talk about Buddha and all this other stuff," and that's not it. Gods can be your habit, your whatever you want to call it, and I really felt like I had put fishing way up here, and like family, I thought was way up here, but all this time I had with it is gone forever now, and I'll never get it back. And it's like now, I literally wait at the door, waiting on my kids to get home because I don't want to miss anything else. Especially right now, Bendy's in school, Everly's about to start walking. You know, it's the little things that mean the most.
Yeah. When you were talking about making things a god and all that, I've had to deal with that, especially this year. Sorry, Chapman was just turning the camera back on. So the making things a god. It's very easy to not even catch on that you're making it a god.
Exactly.
'Cause I know back. I understand that this year has been it's been a terrible year for
Oh yeah,
for America, for the world,
but
for everybody. But it's also been an eye-opening year.
exactly.
People try to make the joke about how all everybody, all the pastors are going to say this is a year of 2020 vision, because it's catchy and all that stuff. But in reality, it
That's what
really
it is.
it is, and
Personal vision.
it's personal vision for yourself, for what's going on in the world right now and where we're at in society.
Yep.
Um, you know, for myself, I have realized that. Now it took me a little bit longer to catch on to some things, but I remember back when the quarantine era started, it was very frustrating because I wasn't able to see at my time my girlfriend. We quarantined ourselves away from each other for about 4 months, and it was insane because we didn't know about how serious this virus was, and we didn't. She has underlying health
Right.
conditions, and so I didn't want to endanger her because I was still going to work.
No.
She wasn't. And I didn't want to see her and potentially endanger that. So I was frustrated with the way my life was at that time. And you say you do your hobbies as a getaway. I do my hobbies as a time killer,
Mhm.
to kill time. I wanted to burn through these months that I wasn't going to be able to see her. And so what I did essentially was is I played video games. I just watched YouTube videos. I just, burned the day away trying to kill time just to get to the day where I could see her again. And what I missed out on, and I had to get caught on. I caught onto it way later than I should have. That all the prayer time and the fasting
Exactly.
that I could have been spending, and reading my Bible that I could have been spending, increasing my growth and growing in God and getting a greater relationship with God. I missed out on that, and I believe Brandon was talking to me about it one time. He was talking about how he was having a little prayer time with God, and he was like, God, I like to play video games. Why can't I have fun? And he said it's like God revealed it to him. He's like, you're just using that as an uh, uh, entertainment way when you know what I can use you for, will be great
Hmm.
for everyone else. And so, that has touched me. And then again, with you bringing the priorities, devotion has really checked me. And this has been awesome tonight to get all this information and get this word out to people. Um, I don't really have anything else to add here. I don't know if you guys do.
What you got, Brother Thomas? I see you pondering over there. What you got?
I'm always pondering, guys. I got sermons going in my head all the time. No, I would just, encourage everybody to take a breather, find a quiet place. Don't fill your life with so much noise that you don't have a time of reflection. Figure out where you're at in your life, where your goals are. Priorities only make sense if you know where you're going. Um, Most people, the reason they can't prioritize is because they don't know what they're shooting for. They don't know what the end goal is. And you say, well, that's simple, heaven. Well, yeah, that's a spiritual goal, but have physical goals, have spiritual goals, because if you don't know what you're shooting for, then it's hard to prioritize. Uh, make a a plan for growth in your business, in your work relationships, in your personal friendships, and your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your kids. But that stuff takes time and it takes reflection. So I would encourage you guys. Everything you're talking about, is great. Uh, but first and foremost, know where you're going, know what you're shooting for, and also understand that that will change with time. There's a lot of circumstances, health, kids, jobs will cause your priority to change. Pandemics, all of that. My walls in my house looked perfectly till I had to work there 5 days a week and then be there on Saturdays and Sundays, and then all of a sudden, my inside of my house needed a serious paint job. Let life show you what you need to reflect on, and don't be afraid to ask yourself hard questions, even if it is kind of personally hurts your feelings. And you say, "Hey, man, I'm finding a chink in the armor." That's okay to figure out that you let it get out of whack, and just acknowledging that, hey, I've got to bring it back. And Justin, I know you've been doing this, and to some extent myself as well lately. Uh, Make sure as guys we're rough and tough, but make sure your health is on that priority list. You're no good to your family if you don't stick around for a good long time.
Oh yeah. Talking about goals and making sure it's right. The way I look at it is have a huge goal, have a big goal, but also have little goals that get you to the big goal, because you can shoot for a big goal and it's going to take a long time to get that big goal. So why not have these little stepping stones? You don't jump from the bottom floor to the top floor. You either have an elevator that takes you through each floor or stairs.
Hmm.
And you got to look at it like that. You got to take one step at a time, but set a goal that's achievable. Yeah, it might not be easy, but once you get there, okay, now I'm on to the next one. And then always have that big goal. And he talked about heaven, but look at it as more than that. Look at it as God. Look at it as your Father. You're not just going to heaven, you're going to be with your Father, your Creator. So you have these goals in between here and there, because you're never going to be at the best that we think we are. We're never perfect, but go through them goals, because you're going to get knocked down. But instead of being knocked down all the way back down, you got something that caught you. You're like, okay, I've been through this. Let me keep going. I got on my next goal. That's something that's really helped me, because like I always was thinking, all right, God, just use me for whatever you need. I'll do this, this, and this, or whatever. but it's whatever God wants to do with me. And the thing is you got to take one step at a time. That's one thing with this priorities. God has broke me down to where I literally was on my hands and knees in the middle of my living room and was like, all right, here's your first step. Let's get your first goal to stand back up. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So
Wow.
look at it as like that. You've got goals. You know, you don't go from, you know, your mama holding you to walking. You got to crawl. You know, you got to sit up. You got to roll over. I just keep going back to kids because, like, I think about my kids now more than ever. I think about the way this world is, and it's just crazy to think that my one wrong step can change everything. So make sure your step, your priority, is in the right direction.
Wow.
I don't know, man. It's crazy. It's a crazy world we live in, but it's even crazier what this flesh will do.
Yeah.
Quit looking at it as, Brandon said it the best, and it's in the Bible. Quit thinking flesh minded, think spiritual minded.
Well, let's quote that because I
Yeah,
actually have that pulled up. Was it Romans 8:5?
I do believe.
For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the spirit, the things of the spirit. That was the. That was the.
That was it was what's crazy is the way that came to me. It wasn't even like I was looking for it. It was kind of like one of those scenarios. I opened my Bible out. There it was. And it was right in the middle of me arguing with my flesh about all this stuff that I was making quote unquote okay. I was justifying, oh, it's not that bad, but
Mhm.
it was hindering me, you
Yeah.
know? I'm telling you, God will speak to you, but you got to be open. You
Mhm.
got to be listening. God's a gentleman. He ain't going to just,
Not gonna
keep
force
on,
things.
but you have to be open.
Wow. Man, this has been an eye opening thing for me. You guys have been throwing some wisdom out there for not just me but for everybody. But honestly, I don't know if we can get any deeper than what we've gotten with this
Man, you
topic.
can always get deeper if you
Um,
want to. It's the
um,
word of God we talking about up in here.
but I guess we can go ahead and start winding this down. Brother Thomas, is there anything else you'd like to add? If not, it's fine.
No, I'm good. I just appreciate you guys letting me join in with you. This has been real fun tonight.
All right, well, thank you, Brother Thomas.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you. Thank you for everything. You've been a true friend and a true leader. We really appreciate it.
It was sad to lose you when we did, but we know you're going off to do better things. For another town. So
Good thing it's not that far.
yeah, you're not too far from us.
No,
And
I was
me
about
and
to
you
say,
both
I'm
passed
only
out.
30 minutes from you guys.
Yeah.
It ain't too bad.
Yeah, it's true.
But
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Stop
nah,
in. I'll put you to work if you're bored.
hey, don't tempt me with a good time.
Yeah, exactly. Bring a chainsaw.
Oh, Hurricane Laura done
Oh,
messed
Lord.
everything up around here.
Well, Brother Thomas, we're gonna go ahead and let you go here. Again, thank you for taking the extra time you had to do this with us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, guys, you have a good evening.
All right, you too, man. Man, that was good. It really
Man.
was. That was awesome.
Man, I love Brother Thomas. He real good friend of mine, and like you talked about him leaving, I cried like a baby. I cried like a little old baby because he was somebody that I could talk to. He really genuine. We talked about good people and stuff. It's just he's a genuine person.
He's a good guy. He really is. Yeah, it was sad to lose him, but we still have good people in our church,
Oh yeah,
and
great people.
yeah, it wasn't like he was the only good person in the church. Don't get that wrong. We got a lot of great people at our church. But I don't believe we have anything else we can go with here. But like I said, thank you guys, Chapman and Justin, so much for setting up this whole thing. Chapman's doing like a little sweep shot of the whole place. I might show that as I'm talking about this. But guys, we do thank you for taking the extra time you had, time out of your day to listen to this podcast. Really appreciate it.
And thank you, Nate. none of this would have happened without you two, because I told Diana, you the brains, you helped me with this a lot, and the video was amazing. If y'all, maybe we had it before this, I don't know, but if y'all haven't checked that video out, please go watch it, because the visual expression in that video will just open your eyes.
On the YouTube version, I'll put it in the description below. But Chapman, thank you for keeping an eye on everything. He's been walking around making sure all the cameras are good and everything. But
behind the scenes, that's what he said he wanted to do.
I'm just a servant.
He's just a servant.
He's got a servant's heart. You know what that means? That means he needs to start stacking chairs. So it's a Tim Hawkins joke. I'm sorry about that.
Tim
But
Hawkins.
no,
Our fire's about to go out. Does that mean we need to end this?
it's starting to. Yeah, the fire's going. That means we need to go ahead and stop it. I'm starting to get cold. You're starting to shiver.
I've been
man.
shaking this whole time. Sorry about people who's been watching me, but the thing is this has really been on me, and I'm like still shaking.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cold now. It's starting to get cold, and the fire's
It's
dying
late
down.
too.
But thank you guys for taking the time to watch this. Have a good night. Have a good rest of the year, and as always, be ready.